Hello, hello. How are you all doing? I'm hoping you're having an absolutely fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Here in Sydney, it is a beautiful day outside, lovely and warm in the sun. You can see it coming through my window. It's doing really well. Today, I would like to talk to you about singing and some things that you can do to help improve your singing that aren't necessarily to do with technique or with like scales or any of that kind of thing, but actions that you can take as a singer that can actually help. And these are things that I have done myself that have been really helpful in my journey as a singer. And so if as I'm kind of going through these things, if you have any questions, please chuck them in the chat, and we can work with those. So, well, let's just jump into it. I have 10 different points that I'd like to share with you today, and I mean, look, there's so many more things that you can do, and obviously technique and scales and those kind of things are really important as a singer. But sometimes you just want another action or something else that you can do to kind of help kind of carry you on that journey. And so the first one I'd like to have a look at is actually listening to other singers. And I know this is something that we do all the time anyway. We kind of listen to music and we listen to things that we enjoy. But I think so often we listen to music and we sing along, we enjoy it, and it's great. But I don't know that we always just listen to music with the idea of trying to understand what the singer's doing. And so, I want you to learn to listen to music without singing along to it and kind of lean into what that singer is doing and how they're doing what they do. And then, I mean, one of the biggest things that has been really helpful for me is actually mimicking a singer. Now, I know there's a lot of singers and singing teachers out there that say you shouldn't try and sound like someone else. Well, I agree, but at the same time, I think it's really important to learn to mimic other singers. It's something that can be a really handy skill. And if you're mimicking multiple people, I don't think that's an issue. I think that can really help you to develop your own sound and to help you learn from other people and what's kind of come before in order to create your own style. And the other thing that you can do while listening to these other singers is improvise, learn their improvisations. I said last time one of my favorite singers of all time was Kurt Elling, and Kurt Elling, he's a jazz singer, and I'm not really a jazz singer myself. I mean, I've done a bit of it and I've done some improvisation, but I learnt a lot of his scats and a lot of his improvisations, and they've really helped me to kind of tune my ear into what you can do as a singer and what the possibilities are as a singer. And I think that's a really interesting thing that you can do while listening to other singers, even if you're learning their runs. If you really love, I don't know, Ariana Grande, she's amazing with runs and doing melismas and those kind of things. And if you really like that, then learning to copy that and learning her ones and then taking it further in your own style, I think can really further you as a singer and do some amazing things. The other thing that I want to say is listen to multiple different styles. I say that I'm not a jazz singer, but if I'm listening to jazz, I can kind of get something from jazz and put it into my own music that's kind of interesting and that kind of takes me further in my own journey. The next thing I'd like to have the next point that I have is actually about learning an instrument, which I know is a really obvious kind of thing. And a lot of people say, if you want to become a better musician or if you want to become a better singer, learn an instrument. And it is 100% true, and I really agree with this. I think it's hard as a singer when if you're basing everything just off singing. It's really hard to get a good framework for how music works, be it notation or be it like rhythm or any of those kind of things. It can be a really challenging just thing as a singer to actually hold that framework and understand music to its fullest extent when you don't have something to relate to. And the piano is a really good one to do because it's all kind of there in front of you. I personally love playing the guitar. I can play a little bit of piano, but the guitar is a really handy thing. The piano is a really good one because it's all there in front of you. But really, it could be anything. You could learn to play the tuba. You could learn to play the flute. I don't know, whatever you like, whatever kind of strikes a strikes a fancy for you. But I think one of the other things, because we're going into so much of a self-production kind of place in the current music scene, being able to produce and be able to play your own instruments and being able to do that kind of thing is really handy in the future. And it does help you to become a better singer because you start to understand more about music theory. You start to understand more about how what you're singing can kind of fit into the grand scheme of music and what you're kind of doing. So if you're watching this live, or even if you're watching it on the replay, maybe chuck in the comments if you do play an instrument and what instrument you do actually play, because that's something I'd like to know. I actually really love the bass. You can see a bass right behind me here. I love playing the bass. I'm not the greatest bass player in the world, but I always say if I wasn't a singer, I would be a bass player because I just love that instrument. I would say my ultimate, the person who is my favorite musician in the whole world is James Taylor, and he often plays bass just with his thumb, and that's something I like to try and achieve with my own guitar playing, and that's a kind of a fun thing that I like to try and achieve. So my third point then is learn songs from different styles. As I kind of went through my degree, I have a music degree, and I didn't love musical theatre. It wasn't necessarily something that I did a lot. I was very, very much in that pop, R&B, rock kind of vein. That's where that's the music I loved. But as I grew and got older, and I actually went and saw Wicked, and the girl who was playing Elphaba, she sang The Wizard and I, and my jaw dropped because her control and her belt was just absolutely astounding. And I, from that moment on, went, whoa, musical theatre is so much greater than I thought it could be. And I started learning a lot of musical theatre. I still love pop and rock, and I love musical theatre as well. But working on some musical theatre repertoire really kind of drew something new out of my voice. The control I was searching for, especially in my upper range. If you've seen my Defying Gravity video on YouTube, that control and that mix, and then going up into that higher chest voice, belty kind of sound, that came from learning musical theatre and even watching singers like Billy Porter, who is absolute monster of a singer. I'd never kind of thought about how he sang before. It was something that I had to experience, and then, I mimicked him really, and learnt so much from that process of mimicking that singer, but also learning that style of musical theatre, because so much musical theatre asks something different of your voice than the pop music that I've been used to singing. And so it really grew me as a singer. And within that as well, I started learning some probably more what you would call legit repertoire, which I don't love singing. That's certainly not my favorite genre of music to sing, but I really love that. What it taught me. It taught me how to get that kind of width in my vocal tone and get that kind of warmth and richness in that lower part of my voice. So I think it can really help you to find new vocal sounds. It can help you to get out of any ruts that you've been sitting in for a little while. It can actually help you find things that you didn't know your voice can do. One of the things I say as a singing teacher, one of the things that I say to my students is, my job isn't necessarily to teach you to sing, but it's help you to discover your voice. And through discovering your voice, it's teaching you to do things with your voice that you didn't know your voice could do. And so learning a different style and learning from a completely different style of music that you've not really done before can really help you to unpack and discover things that your voice you didn't know it could do before. All right, let's move on to my next point, which is learn something about acting. I know that I was kind of talking about this musical theatre idea before, And I kind of, I dove really hard into learning a lot about musical theatre, and part of learning a lot about musical theatre is learning about acting. But one of the things that I've brought from that over into my pop singing is the way that you think about emotion and the way that you communicate emotion through the way that you sing. And I don't know that enough pop singers are really thinking about this. I think there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of content in the words that we're singing, but often we go with what we like the sound of more rather than just thinking about what the emotion is. And I think there's a point for both. But if you kind of learn some acting, do some acting classes, or even read a couple of books about acting, it can just help you to think about lyrics in a different way, and get some different inflections into your acting or into your singing that you would think about in acting. Now, I guess you have to be careful not to go too far if you're a pop singer. Maybe not. Maybe that could be a style that you do. It's a, musical theatre and pop have kind of merged quite a lot over the last little bit. You look at composers like Pasek and Paul and like Dear Evan Hansen. The popularity of that has become massive, and those guys really just write pop songs. Like the songs that they're doing are absolutely amazing songs, but they're very, very grounded in pop sensibility. And I think that's something that's worth having a look at. So by looking at some acting, you can bring so much more into your style of singing that you do. All right, let's move on to my next point, which is do some ear training. So ear training with intervals and chords. Now, I mentioned I did my music degree a little while ago, and my music degree was great. But I kind of went into it not knowing a lot about theory. I went into it not knowing a lot about chords and pitch, and I'm terrible with intervals and all that kind of stuff. And so learning those intervals and learning what they sound like and learning to be able to hear it, I'm still not real great at it. But I have to say it has really helped my musicianship, and it's really helped my singing, especially locking into pitches and locking into doing improvisation. So if you're learning improvisation, you're learning to hear the chords and hear the notes that kind of go over the top of those chords and kind of fit really nicely with that. And so doing some ear training, I know it seems really simple when you're thinking about, just a perfect fifth or a second or any of those kind of things. But those intervals are what makes up a melody. And if you can be really accurate with hearing those intervals, you're going to improve your own singing in terms of what your accuracy in singing those intervals, if you can learn to hear them. And especially then chords and learning to hear some basic chord progressions. It can really help you when you're learning a song and learning a melody to find those connections in the different songs that you've been learning, and it can kind of speed up that learning process as well. So yeah, do some ear training with intervals and chords. My next point is kind of similar though, which is do some ear training, but with frequencies. Now, I grew up with a dad who's an audio engineer, and one of the fun games that we used to kind of play, especially if there was some feedback happening in a sound system, is going, pick what frequency is feeding back. And when you pick what frequency is feeding back, you get really good to tuning your ear into what frequency is what. And one of the reasons this is really handy as a singer, there's a couple of ways that it kind of comes into play. Our voice is very capable of making lots of different sounds. In fact, you may have watched some videos on YouTube about overtone singers, or people who sing like a fundamental and sing notes on top of that and are able to kind of move around on that. And they do that through the manipulation of frequencies, and they do that through the manipulation of like the sounds that are coming out of the mouth. And so we can create really bright sounds with our voice, or we can create really dark sounds. And learning to tune into those frequencies with your voice can help you to create different tonal colors. Be really creative with your own singing. And it's not that you're necessarily going to be able to, I mean, you may, but it's not that you're necessarily going to be able to tune and go, I'm gonna kind of boost the 7K in my voice. I'm gonna boost the 1K in my voice. But at the same time, you can get used to hearing those frequencies and trying to achieve more brightness in the tone or lock your ear into it. The other way that this comes in really handy is when you're doing either live performance or if you're in the studio, you can tune your ear into the frequencies that you're hearing coming out. So often a singer, the one of the big frequencies that we produce as a singer is around the 3K mark or the 3000 hertz kind of mark. And so we want to hear that coming through a monitor or headphones, and if we're not hearing a lot of that, it's not necessarily going to cut through the mix on stage as much as we'd like it to. And so asking a sound guy to kind of put the frequency that you're looking for and being really specific with that frequency can be really handy, because it might not end up being the frequency that you're actually looking for, but if you're sweeping around, you can kind of find it and make it work. And there's often a problem where there's a lot of low frequency in a microphone or in a mix. And so being able to be specific with what you're asking a sound engineer to do is very handy, because you can kind of tune right into it. So it can help, and that can help in the studio as well if you're mixing down your own stuff. If you're producing your own music, it can really help to find those frequencies. Okay, moving on to my next point. I want you to record yourself. Now, I know oftentimes singers don't love to hear themselves back. I've taught over 20,000 lessons in my life as a singing teacher, and I've had a bit of experience with different students, and some people really love to record themselves. Other people don't. And I think it's because we have this disconnect with what we sound like recorded versus what we've got going in our own head. And there's a big difference going on there, but when you record yourself, you get a good sense for how other people hear you. And not just that, you can analyze yourself afterwards. I say a lot of times to my students, just sing whatever comes out and analyze it later. Don't try and be like thinking on the fly, what's good, what's not, is it working, is it not working? Because then we just get into this self-judgment kind of spiral. And so learning to record yourself and listen back to it can actually be a really good indicator for us that we're doing the right things, that we're heading in the right kind of direction. Now, I don't want you to just record yourself. If you have the capabilities, I mean, you can do it in Logic in lots of different ways. But record yourself and do it multiple times, and then do what you call comp, or put together the different performances, and then tune that performance. Now, I know that lots of people have very, very different ideas about whether people should use Auto-Tune or Melodyne or all these different tuning programs. But as an exercise for a singer to record yourself, put those performances together into a cohesive performance, and then tune that performance, that's going to tune your ear into the different pitch issues that you might have. It's going to kind of show you where you want to be. Making those creative choices. And so then when you go to sing that again, you're going to be way more accurate with the way that you're singing that particular song. Now, that might be a bit challenging, and you may not have the ability to actually record yourself and have the programs to tune, because they're expensive, right? But even if you just record yourself and listen back, that's really helpful. But that process of tuning your own vocal is really... It's really eye-opening. I've done it a lot for myself. And even the idea that pitch isn't 100%. Pitch is not black and white. Sometimes a slightly flat note is really cool. And even like a couple of notes that are a little bit out of tune they sound cool. It's not like it has to be perfectly in tune the whole way through. And you get a good sense for that feeling. And if someone really hard tunes vocals, they can sound really funny. And so if you can see the graph and you can see what's happening, that's a really important skill, and it's a really cool lesson that you can learn on your own singing. So my next point after that then is very, very similar, but it's actually record others and do the same process with another singer. So if you have a friend who's a singer, you can get them into your studio and come and get them to sing for you and record them and record their performances, clip their performances together, and then tune their performance with Melodyne or a grid or something. And one of the things that this does is it takes away that emotional reaction that we have to our own singing in our own voice. And that, we often judge our own singing much more harshly than we judge others singing. And so if we're recording someone else and we're tuning someone else and we're putting their performance together, those creative choices that we're making at that particular point are going to teach us a lot about singing, listening to others, finding pitch and hearing pitch. And that's going to really improve our own voice as well. So record some others and tune their vocals as well as your own. So I have 2 more points for you. So we're up to number 9. I want you to practice talking in a character voice and singing character voices. Now I know that seems like a bit of a strange concept, but like I said before, the human voice is capable of creating so many different sounds, and all of those different sounds are created acoustically. Like we can jump on an electric guitar and we can put pedals and make all kinds of crazy sounds, but those crazy sounds come electronically. Whereas in the human voice, we shape and we move and we thicken the vocal cords and we change the resonant space, and there are a lot of things that we can do to kind of manipulate and shape the sound of our voice. And when you do character voices, when you're manipulating the voice in that kind of way, it can really help you to find the extremes of sound. Because if you're singing, you obviously want it to sound nice. But if you're doing a character voice, it's kind of funny and fun, and you're just kind of playing around with it. And so, when you're having fun with something, and when you're kind of going to those extremes, you're finding sounds in your voice that you wouldn't normally use, and something that you can use, whether you actually end up then using it in your own artistry and whether you use it in your own creativity, that's okay. Like you don't have to use it in your actual singing, but it will certainly help you as a singer to kind of push to that next level. Because even if you're then working with a vocal coach and they ask you to make a funny sound, or they ask you to do something, you go, oh, I think that's kind of similar to the sound that I created another time. And so it can really help you with the control of these new techniques that you're trying to learn. So, like I said, the human voice is capable of creating some amazing sounds, and it's really worth, as a singer, exploring a lot of those sounds and trying to find what those sounds are and what they do. All right, this is my last point, my 10th point, and this is write a song. Which some of you may actually be out there and you are a songwriter already, and you're always kind of thinking about that. Probably more, you may be a songwriter more than you're a singer. And so learning to sing is probably more important to you. But if you're a singer and you're not writing your own music, I'd strongly encourage you to learn to write some songs. And there's a couple of reasons, right? It helps you to get a good understanding of songs that you're going to interpret later in life. Like, we sing other people's songs all the time. And when you write songs, you start to then look at those other songs in a completely different light. Because you go, well, why did they make that particular choice? What was going on with that particular melody? What was going on with that particular lyric? and you start to really think much more deeply about the songs that you're singing. Well, I know that's what happened for me. And so you're able to think about those songs in just a much in a much deeper kind of way. You also then get an understanding of the process of writing a song. And it's a struggle, and it's different for everyone. And you can talk to many different songwriters, and they'll have a different way that they write songs. And that's kind of a it's a personal kind of thing. But I think going through that process and going through that struggle of writing a song gives you a good understanding of that. But this can also then help you with your theory and your timing and improvisation, because if you're making a melody up on the spot, you're having to think about whether it sounds good, whether it works with the chords that you're playing, and then whether the timing works and how the rhythmical kind of things go together. And so writing a song, it's so much more than just creating a song for the sake of creating a song. It's a learning process for you as a singer to actually go deeper into what you can do with someone else's songs and the way that you can actually sing someone else's songs. So there you go. That was my 10 points. So the first one was listen to other singers, learn an instrument, learn songs from different styles, learn something about acting, do some ear training with intervals and chords, and then also do some training with frequencies. Record yourself and put that performance together and then tune that performance. Record someone else and put that performance together and tune that performance. Practice talking and singing in character voices and write a song. I'd love to know if you're joining me live, if you've done any of these things. And you can put it in the comments as well if you're watching this on a playback. Chuck it in the comments and tell me if you've done any of these things and if it's helped you, or if you have any other ideas and any other tips for singers that have really helped you with your singing. That'd be worth chucking in the comments as well. Thank you so much for joining me on this video. I'm going to be doing these every Friday at 12 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard. If you're getting some value out of these videos, I'd love you to like the video. I'd love you to jump in and comment on the videos. Even subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be doing more stuff about singing and recording and microphones. I'll be doing some more covers as well. And the other thing you can do is you can book sessions and lessons with me if you want to learn some singing from me, if you want to talk production, if you want to talk songwriting, any of those kind of things. I am more than happy and really would love to kind of talk and meet about those things. So you can do that on my website, which I'll put the link down below. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you on the next one. See you later.